The city scrambling to find more staff for curfew enforcement.
This, unfortunately, is just another example of poor planning.
Who's being asked to help fill the gaps as we question if this solution will help keep our young people safe? Fox 45 News following your tax dollars as city schools request funding. The questions the council has for education leaders. A juvenile crime prosecutor claims new laws make it harder to hold youth accountable.
It's kind of an uphill battle for us.
The changes she's calling for to ensure the safety of our communities. Marijuana set to become legal in Maryland next month.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be lined up.
The preparations being made as retailers transition to recreational sales.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
And we're following some breaking news tonight. Champion boxer Gervonta "Tank" Davis from Baltimore is in jail downtown after an apparent violation of his home detention stemming from a hit-and-run crash in 2020 that injured 4 people, including a pregnant woman.
Less than a month ago, Davis was sentenced to 3 months home detention. Now he'll have to serve that behind bars. Tonight, it's not clear what he did to trigger his full jail sentence. When we learn it, we'll let you know.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Fox 45 News is keeping an eye on your tax dollars as the City Council continues budget hearings. Tonight, the city school system in the hot seat.
Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live from City Hall with what we're learning. Jeff.
That's right. The city school board is expecting an infusion of new state funds this coming year, but it is how they are spending those funds that is under debate tonight. Tonight here at City Hall at a budget hearing, school officials had a lot of plans for that $1.5 billion in additional funding, which they're expected to receive this year. It's all part of Kerwin, the state's educational reform plan. The funds will allow the district to hire almost 500 new full-time staff positions, but it's what happens after those funds that is raising a lot of concern here at City Hall.
My concern is about the continuity of funds and the continuity of programming that we will obviously face once this implementation plan ends.
Part of what I'm charged to do, and frankly what the Board of Commissioners is charged to do, is to be able to project out, right, what that funding looks like, so that, you know, we're not leaving subsequent generations with the cliff.
We got a lot of feedback from families. So it wasn't just like our opinion about what the response was, but we did talk to students and staff and family members who felt like the response wasn't as robust as the severity of what occurred, and it sort of didn't meet it. It just felt like it was a rush thing to kind of check boxes and get back to the normal learning space, which for both staff and students and families, that's just incredibly difficult to do.
That was Councilman Christopher Burnett, who later had raised concerns about what he thought was a woefully inadequate response to the Edmondson High School shooting deaths of students earlier this year when they had left the campus across the street. He said the school needed a far better response in meeting with students and their parents. We are live at City Hall. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Well, Fox 45's Project Baltimore has been investigating problems within some city schools for months. Earlier this year, they found 23 schools where 0 students among those tested are proficient in math. Graduation rates are also dropping. Baltimore City hit a 9-year low in the percentage of students graduating high school in 4 years. Project Baltimore reviewed the 4-year graduation rates from 2022 and found 10 high schools where fewer than half the students graduated in that period. Baltimore City schools forced to return hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars last year after an internal report showed inflated enrollment at Augusta Fells Savage High School. That report came months after Project Baltimore first broke the story about ghost students and grade changing in the school. And the most recent data from the state shows 58% of city students are considered chronically absent. The City Council will hold a hearing on that issue coming up in a few weeks.
Baltimore City Schools is already the 4th most funded large school system in the country. It spends more than $21,000 per student. Project Baltimore also found the number of employees in the school system making more than $100,000 a year rose from 36% from 2019 through 2021. Project Baltimore also found city school CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises earns a base salary of a little more than $333,000 a year. Given the perks in her contract, she nearly earns $445,000 a year.
It's milking taxpayers like dairy cows. We put a premium on those leaders locally that say they're going to educate our children. And so we need to at the end of the day, we need to hold them accountable.
You can find all of Project Baltimore's reporting on the Baltimore City Public School System on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, tomorrow, nearly 20 Baltimore City Public Schools will close early because of hot temperatures and a lack of air conditioning. The city school system was given money to get air conditioning in all of its schools back in 2017. The work was supposed to be done this school year. Back in August, when the school year started, school officials told Fox 45 News air conditioning projects will continue through the summer. Well, when it comes to city budget hearings, the City Council will hear from the Comptroller's office tomorrow. And next week, council members will review key public safety budgets, including Baltimore Police and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement.
Turning to the youth curfew in Baltimore, it will be enforced again this weekend, starting tomorrow. Now, the mayor's office is looking for city employees to volunteer to staff youth connection centers and other engagement areas. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live with more on that memo. Keith, what are you finding out?
Well, Kai, of course, that memo is calling for employee volunteers. Now, I reached out to the director of communications for the mayor, asking him what happens if they don't get the number of volunteers needed. So far, we have not heard back. Still tonight, the call for volunteers.
This plan is designed.
It's an initiative detailed by Mayor Brandon Scott and other city officials. Plans for the mayor's summer youth engagement strategy, which includes the reinstatement of the city's youth curfew.
In a way, and I want to be very clear about this, that limits unnecessary interactions with law enforcement.
Instead, according to the plan, social workers will engage youth with help from city partners. But Fox 45 News has learned, despite the mayor calling the launch of the initiative a, quote, complete success this week, there's seemingly difficulty with staffing to help carry out the curfew mandate. According to an email obtained by Fox 45 News, Deputy Mayor Dr. Letitia Geraza issued a high-importance alert to city employees Wednesday, telling them the administration is challenged in finding adult eyes to monitor minors expected to congregate this weekend at Federal Hill, Fells Point, and the Inner Harbor. Eurypsy Morgan.
And this, unfortunately, is just another example of poor planning.
Of the group, People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement, on the latest developments involving Scott's plan.
What he's trying to do with the youth curfew is a good idea, but you have to be able to put it into practice.
But the immediate goal now, encourage city employees to volunteer between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. this Friday and Saturday. The city wants at least 9 city employees each weekend to be assigned. Compensation includes overtime or comp time. Among their engagement protocols, use their best judgment in determining youth's ages. Let them know that curfew activation is in effect, and ask if they need assistance calling a parent or guardian for pickup. But for Morgan to ask volunteers to engage with youth is troublesome.
Well, I can tell you that the attorney in me is cringing. You're dealing with young people. There's no indication that, these are volunteers. He's asking for volunteers. Is there going to be some sort of a background check system? You can't send people in there blindly. To do what? Just be hall monitors?
Well, the city curfew begins Friday, 9 p.m. for youth 14 and younger, 10 p.m. for youth 16 and under. Now, after June 13th, the curfew hour increases by 1 hour for each group. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Well, the city state's attorney's office is rolling out its citation docket. State's attorney Ivan Bates introduced the new tool during a Fox 45 News town hall earlier this year. He says it will address quality of life crimes without driving up incarceration. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker has a closer look at this new way to fight crime.
You must be accountable. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is promising his new plan will bring accountability back to Baltimore City.
From the time period I was out campaigning to now talking to all the great citizens of our city, the question they ask us and ask me is, when are we going to do something about the quality of life crimes? Well, we're doing it now.
Announcing a new citation docket for low-level offenses, Bates says is a hands-on approach that will improve the quality of life of city residents and ensure consequences for those breaking the law. For adults 18 years and older, citations will cover a multitude of offenses, including several dirt bike charges, disorderly intoxication, loitering, aggressive panhandling, hacking, trespassing, CDS possession, and possession with intent to distribute marijuana, to name a few. A citation will lead to an initial court date, and when arraigned, those eligible will be offered the opportunity to complete community service and receive wraparound services like drug and mental health treatment. If they don't accept, the state will proceed with the case as normal.
This is a small part of the bigger change that is happening in Baltimore.
It's a stark contrast from Bates' predecessor, Marilyn Mosby, who stopped prosecuting crimes she considered low-level in March of 2021. We asked Bates if her past policies are making his new plan difficult to roll out.
That's things we did think about. At the end of the day, the citizens have demanded that we do something, and individuals have to make a decision. I'm not here, and we're not here, and not in this position to coddle individuals, but we're trying to get them help. If they don't want help, they will be prosecuted.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison says the plan is not about mass incarceration or aggressive policing, but admits low-level crimes have been a problem.
We get complaints all the time from members who live in this city from every neighborhood.
And now his officers are being trained and prepared once again to do something they haven't done in a number of years, which he says has been a source of frustration for them.
Well, you hear officers complain because they get those complaints from the citizens. And officers are constantly meeting with members of the community who tell them they expect certain things to be done. They don't want to see certain things in their communities. And it has been a challenge. So number one, keep our officers both inspired and motivated to do the job, in spite of the fact that we had a policy change that we just had to make. Now we are in a position to do something different.
Well, citations will be issued starting June 12th. The first docket will be July 17th. To be eligible for community service alternatives, the defendants must have no pending charges for a crime of violence or handgun offense. The defendants must also not currently be on probation for parole or for a crime of violence and have no outstanding warrants. People are referred to the citation docket only 2 times.
And we want to hear from you. Do you believe prosecuting low-level crime will lower violent crime in the city? So far, 94% of those who voted say yes. You can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10, an exclusive interview with a frustrated juvenile crime prosecutor.
You just kind of tied our hands because the way the law reads.
The law, she says, needs to change, and how the Department of Juvenile Services can help hold young offenders accountable. In exactly 1 month, recreational marijuana use and sales will be legal in Maryland. How one dispensary is preparing for an onslaught of new rules and new customers.
Big heat coming our way to wrap up the work week as we breach the 90-degree mark for the first time likely this season. Not a whole lot of rain chance there, but there are increasing chances into the weekend. I'll let you know what the wettest weekend day is going to be in my Weather Authority forecast.
And in Maryland's Most Wanted, the hunt for a bank robber, the mistake marshals say the suspect made helping them identify him.
A Prince George's County judge orders a 15-year-old known as Baby K to be held in an adult detention facility without bond. The teen is accused of trying to kill another teen on a Prince George's County school bus. Now, Prince George's County officials are calling out state laws they say make it too hard to hold young people accountable.
Those protections have given way to a protection of some people who have committed very heinous crimes, which, yes, that does hamper what we are doing now.
It's becoming more and more difficult to hold juveniles accountable.
Well, those voices aren't the only ones we're hearing criticize Maryland's juvenile justice law. The deputy chief of the Juvenile Division in Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office is too. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has the exclusive interview.
Pamela Chung says after the Juvenile Restoration Act became law, it really limits what prosecutors can do when it comes to juvenile offenders. That, paired with the Department of Juvenile Services struggling to provide adequate programming, she says communities could be at risk. What has that been like?
It's been like a roller coaster.
Working in the city state's attorney's office for more than 20 years, Pamela Chung has spent 16 of them in the juvenile division. The Juvenile Restoration Act was passed in Annapolis in 2021, sparking several changes in how juvenile crime is now handled in Maryland.
There's a lot about the new law that rolled out that we weren't happy about. It really did change the landscape and how we can prosecute cases.
Kids 13 and under can be charged with many crimes. Probation is different. Questioning is handled more delicately now. And Chung says the Department of Juvenile Services has much more control over what happens with young offenders.
That does greatly, I guess you could say, binds us in terms of what types of cases we can prosecute.
How so?
The Department of Juvenile Services really is a gatekeeper with regards to cases. To have an agency like the Department of Juvenile Services basically making the decision of whether or not the case should be charged or not, it is frustrating.
Once DJS gets the case and refers a juvenile for services, Chung says those services aren't always enough.
If you are being supervised in the community, the department only has 3 programs. Those 3 programs are offered to every youth that comes through the Department of Juvenile Services. So you could be a first-time offender and you could be a repeat offender, but you're receiving the same services.
In your experience with almost 20 years in this world, is that how it should be done?
No.
Outlining a 3-pronged approach to juvenile sentences, she says public safety is the prosecutor's top priority. Then it's rehabilitative services, followed by accountability.
We're moving more towards less accountability, and with rehabilitation, it's about services, right? And so when we're lacking in services, really, how are you rehabilitating anyone?
Fox 45 News previously reporting on the inadequate services provided within DJS outlined in this 2022 annual report. Secretary Schiraldi, thank you so much. In an exclusive interview with Fox 45 News, new DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi admitting his agency has work to do.
I think we need to do better in terms of programming. We don't work as well as we could with law enforcement, and I think that's an area we need to improve on, and that's going to be one of my biggest priorities.
Back in Baltimore, Chung says the services that are available to young offenders have a lengthy wait list.
You have a youth who is in need of immediate assistance and they don't get the services for months down the road.
Do you think it's important for lawmakers to understand that difference and that distinction between the various levels of offenses that these kids are committing?
Absolutely. I don't think a lot of people understand how the juvenile system actually works.
What do lawmakers need to do?
Quite frankly, to be honest with you, we need to get rid of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. It's kind of an uphill battle for us because we are fighting our way, trying to ensure public safety, but when the rehabilitative part and the accountability part aren't being met, public safety is at risk.
Any changes to the law would have to wait for lawmakers to go back to Annapolis in January. Governor Westmore could take executive action or a special session could be called. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Now, Fox 45 News heard complaints from Anne Arundel County Police as well. They released a 7-page long list of crimes, including car thefts, animal abuse, even rape, they say were committed by children under 13 who they cannot prosecute. The Hartford County Sheriff agreeing, saying state law leaves officers' hands tied when it comes to juvenile offenders.
We're living in a time where, unfortunately, legislators, lawmakers, have decided that it's better to support the lawbreakers rather than those who are enforcing the law.
Well, Governor Wes Moore signed hundreds of bills into law following this year's legislative session. None of them dealt directly with the juvenile crime problem. Fox 45 News pressed him and state lawmakers about the juvenile crime crisis. The lawmaker behind the bill pledged to amend it, but that didn't happen. 2 weeks ago, we sent questions to the governor asking, will you call a special session to address juvenile violence? And if not, what's your message to families who've lost children to gun violence this year? The governor responded with a press release his office sent out earlier in that week, not directly answering our questions.
We actually expect Maryland to be kind of a cannabis destination.
Recreational marijuana will be legal in Maryland 1 month from today. We're getting a behind-the-scenes look at a local dispensary to see how they're getting ready.
Campaign season heating up quickly, so what do voters say they really want? And why is that prompting more challengers to get in the race? I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a look coming up.
And the temperatures, away we go. Going to be starting in the 50s and 60s in the morning, but by tomorrow afternoon, you're going to need those shorts and short sleeves. You know what? You're going to probably need a cool place air conditioning, a fan, the whole gamut all day long. Going to need the sunglasses, too, with a lot of sun. Going to be an outside chance of a spot shower storm. Look at that high, 92 degrees on average. We hit the 90s usually in May. Looks like it's taken us now until June to do it around here this year. Better chance of some rain to cool us down Saturday, but look at that Sunday. Very nice. I'm going to let you know how long the rain stays away in my Weather Authority forecast.
Well, the presidential race is getting crowded. There could be 9 or more Republican candidates in all, with more to come.
Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman takes a closer look at what voters say they want.
Make America great again. That's a very simple.
Back at the starting line, former President Trump stumping across Iowa and trying to stomp out his early competition.
Who can believe in an open border? But when I heard DeSantis go out and say, and talk about 8 years, we need 8 years. You don't need 8 years, you need 6 months.
referring to Governor Ron DeSantis, who is crisscrossing New Hampshire for the first time as a candidate.
You can have a bold vision, enact a bold agenda, and attract people to your candidacy and not repel people.
And relying on his wife, a former TV host, to help burnish his image. But what do Republican voters want? A recent CBS News YouGov poll shows likely GOP voters prefer someone who challenges woke ideas, opposes any gun restrictions, says Trump won in 2020, and makes liberals angry. In many ways, Trump to a T.
We hope everybody understands, like these people, that you can't beat Trump.
Let's just go ahead and make this nomination right here and now.
Yet that hardly means they all want Trump. There are plenty of Republican voters who, like other candidates, say Trump's too controversial, don't like how he deals with opponents, and are concerned over his ongoing legal fights. In other words, 49% of that group say Trump makes them feel exhausted. And that's encouraging others to jump in.
I have devoted my life to this fight, and I'm just getting started.
Let's go! Let's go!
And in the next week, former Vice President Mike Pence and 2016 candidate Chris Christie are expected to announce bids. And current governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, also gearing up for a potential run. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
A Baltimore woman has questions weeks after she says the city mistakenly sold her home. Fox 45 News is demanding answers, and she says the city is ignoring her pleas for help.
A handful of states are passing what critics call trans tourism bills. I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C., what these bills are and why some are against it.
We are following three big stories at 10:30 tonight.
A handful of states are introducing laws protecting transgender care and facing backlash for it.
And one Baltimore City woman is left with more questions than answers after she says the city mistakenly sold her home in a tax sale. We hear her calls for help that she says Baltimore is ignoring.
Recreational marijuana will be legal 1 month from today for adults 21 and older.
We've been seeing this happen for 15 years, but it was always away in Colorado and California, and New Jersey and Massachusetts. And now to be right here, right now in the middle of it, it is exciting.
Fox 45 News is getting a behind-the-scenes look at one dispensary in our area.
Amy Simpson has a look at how they're getting ready to welcome in recreational customers.
Whether or not you have plans to check out one of Maryland's dispensaries, this is big business. This one dispensary here in Columbia, which right now is only open to medical cannabis sales, says it sees about $1 million in revenue every month.
Mitch Trellis has high expectations of what's to come in 30 days.
It's a 30-time increase in our potential customer base.
This Howard County native, the co-CEO of Remedy Maryland, showing off his Columbia dispensary.
We did not build small, and we did that on purpose.
It's been open to medical cannabis patients in recent years, now preparing for a possible deluge of recreational users on July 1st.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be lined up.
According to Trellis, this nearly 10,000 square foot superstore sees roughly 300 to 800 medical cannabis patients daily. But in just a few weeks, it won't only be patients, but customers. And he estimates foot traffic could grow to anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 people each day.
At the end of the day, retail comes down to location and experience.
Remedy says it wants to attract all kinds to its dispensary.
This is the Remedy VIP room.
As Marylanders 21 and over will soon be able to legally buy flour, pre-rolls, edibles, vapes, lotions, the list goes on. Trellis calling the 9% sales tax on recreational cannabis, which is the same as alcohol, a very smart decision by state lawmakers.
If our goal is truly to end the black market, then the answer is to have a cheap sales tax, because the black market has no sales tax.
This business also preparing for out-of-towners, as Maryland is surrounded by half a dozen states that have yet to legalize recreationally.
We actually expect Maryland to be kind of a cannabis destination, a draw.
Trellis said 1/8 of an ounce of cannabis will run customers anywhere from $30 to $60.
This is bulk cannabis.
Temperature controlled and under tight security, Remedy taking us inside its vault in Columbia as the dispensary stocks up on inventory in the coming weeks.
You have Applejack, Apple Butter Breath, Bahama Breeze, burnt orange.
And while they can't perfectly predict Maryland's appetite for legal weed, this business braces for the possibility of selling out of its products entirely.
It's like being a liquor store or being a restaurant and like possibly running out of food in the middle of the day. It's something you have to just kind of plan for and keep your fingers crossed.
And as Remedy preps for that transition to recreational cannabis sales, they say staffing and logistics must change too. 20 staff on a normal day will grow to more than 40 staffers, and 12 cash registers by next month will need to be at least 20. In Columbia, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
While many are excited for legalization of recreational marijuana, the state's marijuana laws are creating a nightmare scenario for small business owners selling hemp. The state's framework caps the level of THC allowed to be sold in hemp products at a rate that will make many items that are legal right now illegal to sell without a marijuana license. While hemp sellers could apply for such a license to sell cannabis right now, there's no guarantee they'll get one. In the meantime, they tell Fox 45 News they'll suffer devastating losses if they don't get that license.
It talks about, no one being left behind, but we're totally being left behind.
Everything that we've built over the last almost 5 years is about to be stripped from me in 60 days.
Lawmakers say the restrictions were written on purpose and they had concerns about a lack of regulation on hemp. The business owners say they've been asking for regulation and want new testing and packaging standards for their products, but want them to be implemented without the law effectively ending or wiping out their businesses.
Another top issue, what will Baltimore city leaders do with the money they get from marijuana sales? The city council laying out a plan to give millions of dollars in taxes and fees back to local jurisdictions. The money will go towards investments in communities the city determines were disproportionately harmed by cannabis enforcement over the past 20 years. Well, still more questions than answers tonight for a homeowner who says the city accidentally sold her home in a tax sale. And this woman is speaking with Fox 45 News about how that mix-up has put a strain on her finances, and her house, of course, is at risk.
As Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor reports, her pleas to the city for help have gone ignored.
I had no idea what was going on.
Ansela Crawford's fears.
It was very traumatizing.
Now turning to frustration. As a week goes by and still the city has yet to address allegations her home was mistakenly sold in a tax sale.
I am really tired of going back and forth and dealing with this stuff.
According to Crawford, she took 2 full days off work to speak with officials inside Baltimore's municipal building, who explained the lien on her home was triggered by an overdue lawn mowing bill. But Crawford doesn't have a lawn. Further investigating revealed while pictures of the grass the city was called out to cut do show Crawford's address on the sign, the backyard is of the vacant house across the street. In October, the city's housing department also deeming Crawford's home an abandoned property. But one look inside proves there must have been another mistake.
I told them, this wasn't my property. This was an error.
But Crawford claims the city wouldn't listen. To save her home, it cost her nearly $2,900 in fees, money she now says the city should return. And she's not alone.
The city should be embarrassed by the situation.
Former federal and state prosecutor Dhruv Ignaraja agrees.
They should also have a little bit of humanity in them to at least return a call.
Along with taxpayer advocate David Williams.
City officials absolutely botched this. And not only did they botch it, but they really put someone in a really tough financial position.
Williams arguing when someone's home is at risk, the city's response should be immediate.
There is no excuse for it to take as long as it has. This is a person's house we're talking about. This is thousands of dollars in fines that she doesn't owe.
Last week, FOX45 reaching out to the mayor's office and the housing department about the issue. A spokesperson wrote back saying the situation was being investigated. However, 2 follow-up emails later, the city now ignoring our questions completely, unwilling to answer how this happened and if or when Crawford will be made whole.
It's such a simple solution. Just refund her the money to set right your wrong.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
We have new video from a string of thefts at gas stations in Anne Arundel County. Anne Arundel County police say the thieves look for people pumping gas in Laurel. The thieves open the door and steal things while the driver isn't looking. Police say the suspects then jump back into their car and drive off. Police are warning people to be aware and say it's happened 5 times at gas stations in May. You are urged to lock your doors even while you're standing next to your vehicle pumping gas.
Well, more than 15,000 people still do not have power in Anne Arundel County, but that's an improvement on the outage that snarled traffic today and left at one point 72,000 people without power, really, and no AC on this really warm day. BGE says there was a problem at a substation near the Navy football stadium, and it expects full restoration sometime later tonight.
A handful of states that are introducing laws protecting transgender care are facing backlash. The National Desk, Angela Brown, explains.
The American Principles Project just issuing this travel advisory for California, Minnesota.
I just think that anything before 18, we need to be very careful about before introducing it to children.
Terry Schilling, APP president, advising parents to travel with caution, pointing to bills like HB 146 in Minnesota.